Iran has faced persistent economic hardships, political repression, and waves of protests in the 21st century. The young, globally connected population demands greater freedom, equality, and government accountability. Economic sanctions have worsened inflation and unemployment, fueling public frustration. Protests, including the 2009 Green Movement and 2019 to 2020 demonstrations, highlight growing discontent, with women playing a key role, especially in hijab protests. Iran remains a major regional power, balancing alliances and conflicts while navigating tensions with the West. As leadership transitions loom, Iran stands at a crossroads, torn between revolutionary ideals and the aspirations of its modernizing society. Let's travel to the history. In the 21st century, Iran has faced persistent challenges and transformations. With an increasingly young and connected population, Iranians have confronted issues including economic sanctions, social restrictions, and political repression. Over the past 2 decades, the aspirations of Iran's people have driven waves of protest, signaling widespread discontent and a deep desire for reform. However, internal divisions and external pressures have complicated this journey. Despite these obstacles, Iran remains a critical player in the Middle East, navigating regional conflicts and an evolving relationship with the West. The story of contemporary Iran is one of resilience and struggle. As it attempts to balance its revolutionary ideals with the needs and hopes of a modernizing society, Iran's young population, which makes up a significant portion of the country's demographic, has been at the forefront of demands for social and political change. This generation grew up post-revolution and is highly connected to global culture and media through the internet and social platforms. Their exposure to international ideas and values has amplified their aspirations for personal freedom, social equality, and government accountability. The Green Movement in 2009, sparked by disputed election results, was a turning point. It highlighted the growing demand for democratic reforms and individual rights, setting the stage for future movements. The government suppression of the Green Movement, however, created a sense of distrust in the political process among many Iranians, leading to a broader disillusionment with the government's promises of reform. Iran's economy has been significantly impacted by decades of sanctions, especially since the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. Sanctions have targeted key sectors, including oil and finance, making it difficult for Iran to participate in international markets. This isolation has led to inflation, rising unemployment, and economic hardship for ordinary Iranians. The economy's strain has further fueled frustration with the government, as people struggle to afford basic goods and services. Iran's leaders have promoted self-sufficiency as a solution to economic isolation, encouraging local production and reducing dependence on foreign imports. While this policy has created some resilience, it has not been enough to alleviate the widespread economic issues. Many Iranians, especially the youth, feel limited by the lack of opportunities and the difficulty of building a prosperous life within a constrained economy. In November 2019, protests erupted across Iran in response to a sudden increase in fuel prices, a move aimed at reducing state spending amid economic sanctions. This seemingly small change became a catalyst for broader unrest, as people took to the streets demanding better living conditions, transparency, and political accountability. The protests quickly spread, with demonstrators voicing anger at economic mismanagement, corruption, and repression. The government responded with a harsh crackdown, reportedly resulting in hundreds of deaths and thousands of arrests. These protests reflected deeper societal grievances and a sense of desperation among many Iranians. The government's swift and severe response underscored its reluctance to allow open dissent, but the protests showed the growing frustration of the Iranian people and their willingness to challenge the state. Women have been central to Iran's social movements, particularly in recent years. Iran's Islamic Republic enforces strict dress codes, including mandatory hijab for women, as a core part of its religious governance. However, many women, especially younger generations, have increasingly opposed these regulations. This resistance gained momentum in 2017 with the Girls of Revolution Street protests, in which women publicly removed their headscarves in defiance of the law. In September 2022, protests erupted following the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman detained by Iran's morality police for allegedly violating the hijab law. Her death sparked nationwide protests led by women, who were soon joined by men and young people from across the country. The slogan "Woman, Life, Freedom" became the rallying cry, symbolizing broader demands for human rights, justice, and personal autonomy. These protests reflect a profound shift within Iranian society, where women and youth are increasingly vocal about their rights and freedoms. The government's response was once again harsh, with crackdowns, arrests, and internet blackouts, but the protests demonstrated the deep desire for change and the resilience of Iran's people in their pursuit of a more just and free society. Despite its domestic challenges, Iran has maintained significant influence in the Middle East. It has strategic alliances with groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Assad government in Syria, and various factions in Iraq and Yemen, positioning itself as a central player in regional politics. Iran's foreign policy is often characterized as a defensive strategy, aiming to deter adversaries and expand its influence to counterbalance rivals like Saudi Arabia and Israel. Iran's regional involvement, particularly in Syria and Iraq, has allowed it to project power and counter U.S. influence, but it has also strained its resources and alienated segments of its population. Many Iranians question the government's prioritization of foreign conflicts over domestic needs, particularly given the economic hardships at home. Iran's role in regional conflicts has further complicated its relationship with Western nations, contributing to sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Iran's relationship with Western countries, particularly the United States, has been strained since the 1979 revolution, but the nuclear issue has been a recurring point of contention. The 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, or Iran nuclear deal, was a significant diplomatic breakthrough, temporarily lifting some sanctions in exchange for limits on Iran's nuclear program. However, the U.S. withdrawal from the deal in 2018 and the reimposition of sanctions deeply affected Iran's economy and led to further distrust of Western intentions. Iran has since taken a more cautious approach to international negotiations, seeking guarantees that any new agreements would be more durable. While many Iranians support a negotiated solution that could ease sanctions and improve the economy, hardline factions within the government remain wary of Western influence and skeptical of diplomacy with the United States. The nuclear issue remains unresolved, and Iran continues to balance diplomacy with a posture of resistance, asserting its right to develop nuclear technology while negotiating with caution. As the Islamic Republic nears its fifth decade, the position of the supreme leader remains central to Iranian governance. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has held the position since 1989, overseeing Iran's domestic and foreign policies with significant influence. His guidance has shaped Iran's response to both internal dissent and external threats, with a focus on maintaining the revolutionary principles of independence, resistance to Western influence, and adherence to Islamic governance. The aging Khamenei's eventual succession is a topic of speculation, as his successor could steer Iran in a new direction or reinforce the status quo. Meanwhile, President Ebrahim Raisi, a conservative with close ties to the judiciary, represents a return to more hardline policies after the relatively moderate presidencies of Mohammad Khatami and Hassan Rouhani. This conservative shift reflects the government's intent to reinforce traditional values and maintain control, but it also risks alienating the younger generation and reform-minded citizens. Today, Iran stands at a crossroads, with deep social divisions and growing demands for reform. The younger generation, which has been shaped by the internet, global media, and a broader awareness of the world, desires a future with greater freedom, economic opportunity, and social justice. Women's rights, freedom of speech, and political accountability are central themes in the calls for change. Many Iranians seek a government that can meet their needs and protect their rights without resorting to repression or isolation. Iran's future is uncertain, with multiple potential paths. One scenario envisions gradual reforms that could reconcile the people's demands with the Islamic Republic's governance, allowing for greater individual freedoms and economic integration. Another scenario sees Iran maintaining its current stance, prioritizing regional influence and resisting Western engagement, which may continue to fuel internal dissent and economic challenges. The legacy of the 1979 revolution endures in the form of an Islamic Republic that has resisted foreign intervention, maintained a distinct cultural identity, and remained a powerful force in the Middle East. However, this legacy also includes a history of repression, economic hardship, and unresolved tensions between the state and its people. The 21st century has seen Iran's people push back against the limitations imposed by their government, demanding a nation that reflects their evolving values and aspirations. The resilience and courage of Iran's citizens are evident in their continued willingness to speak out and advocate for change, despite the risks involved. As Iran moves forward, it faces the challenge of finding a path that honors its revolutionary roots while embracing the voices of its younger generations. The nation's future will depend on how its leaders respond to the growing demand for reform, and whether they can build a society that balances Iran's revolutionary ideals with the modern aspirations of its people.